This video is part 3 of a 4-part series. If you haven't watched the first 2 videos, we recommend you do so before watching this one. Link in the description. Part 2 ended off on Carl Jung's idea that Hitler's unconscious, or voice as he called it, was more often than not the reason he had an edge over other politicians.
His voice was correct. Now who knows but that his voice may continue to be correct? If it does, it will be very interesting to observe the history of the next few years because, as he said just after his Czech victory, Germany stands today on the threshold of her future. That means he has just begun, and if his voice tells him that the German people are destined to become the lords of Europe and perhaps of the world, and if his voice continues always to be right, then we are in for an extremely interesting period, aren't we?
Yes. It seems that the German people are now convinced they have found their Messiah. In a way, the position of the Germans is remarkably like that of the Jews of old. Since their defeat in the World War, they have awaited a Messiah, a Savior. That is characteristic of people with an inferiority complex. The Jews got their inferiority complex from geographical and political factors. They lived in a part of the world which was a parade ground for conquerors from both sides. When they were threatened with extinction by the Romans, they invented the solacing idea of a Messiah who was going to bring all the Jews together into a nation once more and save them. And the Germans got their inferiority complex from comparable causes. They came up out of the Danube Valley too late and founded the beginnings of their nation long after the French and the English were well on their way to nationhood. They got too late to the scramble for colonies and for the foundation of empire. Then, when they did get together and made a united nation, they looked around them and saw the British, the French, and others with rich colonies, and all the equipment of grown-up nations. And they became jealous, resentful, like a younger brother whose older brothers have taken the lion's share of the inheritance. This was the original source of the German inferiority complex, which has determined so much of their political thought and action, and which is certainly decisive of their whole policy today. It is impossible, you see, to talk about Hitler without talking about his people. Because Hitler is only the German people. It occurred to me that the last time I was in America, that one could make an interesting geographical analogy about Germany. In America, I noticed that somewhere on the East Coast there exists a certain class of people called poor white trash, and I learned that they are largely descendants of early settlers, some of them bearers of fine old English names. The poor white trash were left behind when some of the people with energy and initiative climbed into their covered wagons and drove west. Then, in the Middle West, you meet the people I consider the most stable in America. I mean psychologically the best balanced. Yet in some places farther west, you meet some of the least balanced people. Now, it seems to me that, taking Europe as a whole and including the British Isles, you have in Ireland and Wales the equivalent of your West Coast. The Celts possess colourful imaginative faculties. Then, to correspond to your sober Middle West, you have in Europe the English and the French, both of them psychologically stable peoples. But then you come to Germany, and just beyond Germany are the Slav mujiks, the poor white trash of Europe. Now the mujiks are people who can't get up in the morning but sleep all day, and the Germans, their next door neighbors, are people who could get up but got up too late. Don't you remember how the Germans even today represent Germany in all their cartoons?
Yes, Sleepy Michael, a tall, lean fellow in a nightgown and nightcap.
That's right. And Sleepy Michael slept through the division of the world into colonial empires. And so the Germans got their inferiority complex, which made them want to fight the World War. And of course, when they lost it, their feeling of inferiority grew even worse and developed a desire for a Messiah. And so they have their Hitler. If he is not their true Messiah, he is like one of the Old Testament prophets. His mission is to unite his people and lead them to the Promised Land. This explains why the Nazis have to combat every form of religion besides their own idolatrous brand. I have no doubt but that the campaign against the Catholic and Protestant churches will be pursued with relentless and unremitting vigor for the very sound reason, from the Nazi point of view, that they wish to substitute the new faith of Hitlerism.
Do you consider it possible that Hitlerism might become for Germany a permanent religion for the future, like Mohammedanism for the Muslims?
I think it highly possible. Hitler's religion is the nearest to Mohammedanism, realistic, earthy, promising the maximum of rewards in this life, but with a Muslim-like Valhalla into which worthy Germans may enter and continue to enjoy themselves. Like Mohammedanism, it teaches the virtue of the sword. Hitler's first idea is to make his people powerful because the spirit of the Aryan German deserves to be supported by might, by muscle and steel.
If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, subscribe, and drop a comment. And turn on the notifications to make sure you don't miss part 4. See you next week.